In the last number of years, there have been a lot of Russian-speaking immigrants that have come. You've been here now for a number of decades. What is the number one piece of advice you would offer someone who's considering or just made Aliyah?
I mean, we were very different from the local society. The way we looked. We were ex-Soviet citizens, a bit different, Soviet Union, Middle East. It's so funny to say Soviet Union because you feel it was like hundreds of years ago,
It's the history book.
It's something you read in the history books. But in my Teudat Zut, it's written a place of birth, it's Soviet Union. I look at this and me? We felt such freedom coming here and being able to express our Judaism without hiding it. You can breathe. I can't imagine myself living in another country and not feeling comfortable saying I'm a Jewish woman. I mean, this is crazy,
Do you think your career would have looked the same had you not moved here?
Oh no, of course not. I have no idea who would I be if I would not move here.
Welcome back to Yalla, Let's Go, the podcast that Erica and I started to remind ourselves and maybe other people why we made Aliyah. We are speaking to everyone from venture capitalists, athletes, journalists, cookbook authors, people working in tech, and more. And today we're super excited to welcome a special guest, Lena Russovsky. But before we jump in, I want to ask Erica, post check, how are you feeling about living in Israel?
So I had a really unique experience last week. I spent a couple of days in the hospital because my son broke his elbow and had surgery. Boy, mom. And
Times 3.
it was really just so unexpectedly unique because it was such a melting pot of Israeli society in the most extreme way. You had, Jews and Arabs working together, doctors, nurses, patients, Jews from all walks of life, ultra-Orthodox, secular, from every country you could imagine, with Arabs, everyone waiting together in the waiting room. Everybody was treated exactly the same. Everyone was getting the exact same standard of care. All the doctors and nurses were working together. It was just like this, everybody together, and it felt like I wish everybody who said that there's an apartheid here could just come to this medical center. This is one of Israel's biggest and most professional medical centers and see what actually daily life is like in this hospital.
Yeah. We can say not everything is perfect in this country, but there are moments where you're like, I just want to take a snapshot and let everybody see it.
Exactly.
How's Adir now?
Adir is home recovering with a giant cast on his arm.
Okay, we're sending him love.
Yeah.
Okay, we're super excited to welcome Lena Russovsky and Olah from the former Soviet Union, who made Aliyah at the age of 9. And since then has worn many, many hats, including journalist at Kan, one of our big broadcasting stations, activist leading one of the largest online communities, and more. Lena, we're excited to welcome you to Yalla.
Hi, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm excited as well. Thank you.
We are going to start with our hardest question.
Please.
Okay, if you can tell us your life story in under a minute.
Oh my God. So let's do it. Yes, our family came to Israel in 1991. I was 9 years old. We made Aliyah to Israel from Moscow. It was still Soviet Union. It was like, something from the history. And I grew up here. I went to school. I went to the army. I have a first degree from Tel Aviv University in biomedical science. It was my first and ongoing career in Biotech. And my second degree is from the Tel Aviv University as well in gender studies. So this is like the other things I'm interested in, and I'm also an activist and a social and cultural entrepreneur. And during the years, I founded many nationwide projects for Olim and for elder people and for younger. So, you name it. And one of, I think, my biggest achievements and biggest projects is our online community, which is not only online, but also online. It was recognized by Meta Israel as one of the most influential women communities in Israel a few years ago. We have more than 56,000 people who are mostly people like me, who came here with their families when they were children or teenagers, what is called 1.5 generation. I guess we will speak about that. And many social projects and cultural projects came out of this community and that we led during the years. So So yeah, there are many things I'm interested and curious about. I'm also a high-tech entrepreneur, so there are many things I'm doing, yeah.
So you didn't choose to come here. You were put on a plane by your parents and brought here. What do you remember about, those first, weeks or months that you were living in Israel?
Listen, this is crazy, when you think about that, because when you are a child, you are not, you understand reality, but not, very deep. I mean, you understand them only when you grow up, you can recall the things that you went through. But I have to tell you that we had a very, very hard arrival journey to here, because it was just before Soviet Union fell apart, so nothing was really sure. I mean, we were already in the airport with all our things, with many people with us, and they almost canceled the flight. So it was a crazy times, like really crazy times in history, and in the world history, yes, and in our personal history and the family history. And we went through Budapest, and we were waiting there for an hour with all our bags. It was with the elderly and the children. And when we came here, I was 9 years old. I came from Soviet Union. We know from the books that in Soviet Union everything was very strict. And we came here, and there was a lot of mess, of course, because many people came at that day. It was first in July 1991. And we came out the airport, out to Israel. And I looked around, and there were a lot of people in the, wherever gathering, waiting for taxis, waiting for ride, not knowing where we are. And two first things that I experienced as a child, one is the heat, Well, I experience this now also. I came here and I said, oh, it's so hot outside. So it's the heat. And the other one is that I saw the flag, Israeli flag, and it was torn and it was dirty. And I was shocked. As a child, I was shocked. Because, if you think about Soviet Union, everything, all the symbols of the country were like precious, And to see Israeli flag where we were coming to, in the airport where we welcome people, not clean and tight, but a bit torn and then not clean. It was shocking for me, I was like, how can it be,
Still probably that way today. You went from, as you said, biotech to radio presenting to a degree in feminist studies to leading this community. Lots of hats, not a straight line. Can you talk about how you built your career?
Sometimes we speak about our career. It's something that is separated from us. Like there is me and there is my career, but it's the same, And I think that I live my life from a passion, like from things that I feel that are important. And I think I'm blessed to have an opportunity to make things that are also making so good for others. It's either can be a scientific research to help people. Now we are working with neonatals, infants and things like that. And on the other hand, to give a place for women and for different voices on my radio show and in our community. So I can't really tell you how I developed my career. I was just, listening to myself and just striving to live with meaning. I always wanted to live with a meaning, with a sense of meaning. I think this is the most important thing, It doesn't, and I feel privileged, although I made it, with my two hands, but still, it's something about character, I guess, or whatever. But
I love that answer. I want to ask one more question. Do you think your career would have looked the same had you not moved here?
Oh, no, of course not. I have no idea who would I be if I would not move here, because the society it's product of a society, although we don't like to think about that, because we are so individual and we are so special, and we are. We are very special. But if we were grown up in different place, we will be differently special. Okay, so I can't even imagine what kind of woman I would be if we stayed in Moscow, I would be a Russian Jewish girl in Russia. I have no idea how I would look and what would I do and how would my life look like. It's a nice, it's a nice mind game to think about that, but I can't even imagine who I would be.
Yeah, it's super interesting. I just think this notion that you're being driven by meaning, I think, is a really beautiful way to explain it.
Yeah, thank you.
So let's talk about the community that you built, Russian women without a sense of humor.
Yeah.
Excellent.
which has almost 60,000 members. First of all, what is this name? Do Russian women not have a sense of humor? And what drove you to kind of start this community?
Well, first of all, we do have, and I think you can feel that I'm a bit funny also, I'm also writing a stand-up already for a few years. So if you will hear me, giving a stand-up show, it's me. But I will just say that I founded this community 12 years ago, and it was a kind of a response to something that was going on the national TV, where I found myself working after a few years. So, life is going on circles. And there was some kind of remark, very unrespectful toward the Russian-speaking women. And everyone laughed in the studio, on the television show. And when I saw it, I was amazed. How can they say something like this on a national television about such a big population? And I had the rage, because I live from passion, so passion has different
Other side is rage.
expressions. And I said, okay, this will not happen, okay? And I started to write letters, and I started to, speak with people who are related to that show, to the national television. And I founded this community because I wanted to gather people, just to express what they think about this kind of things. And without sense of humor is because many times humor is used as a weapon. Everywhere, yeah, humor is used as a weapon to humiliate someone, to make someone feel uncomfortable. And when the other person responds to it, you say, what's the matter with you? You don't have a sense of humor? So I was saying, you know what? I don't have a sense of humor, but if you will be funny, I will have one. So this is the thing.
So actually, on our call before we filmed this, you said something that I was not aware of at all, that I'd love if you could talk a little bit more about.
Sure.
How Russian women feel they are discriminated against in Israeli society.
Yeah, well, it's much less now, but it was crazy in the 90s, and it's still kind of wound, in our hearts and in the hearts of our families. Yeah, there's about the stereotypes about Russian women, Russian-speaking women, yeah, the Olah from former Soviet Union. I mean, we were very different from the local society, the way we looked. I was a child, but our parents, the way we look, the way we were ex-Soviet citizens, So it was a bit different from Israel, from the Middle East, a bit different, Soviet Union, Middle East. So, the people's perception was very, women were sexualized a lot, were harassed a lot. There's researches made that the harassment toward the Russian-speaking girls and teenagers were 2.5 times more than to other people. Yes, that's true. And not only among us, but women many times they are silent about this kind of experiences. And also, when you are an immigrant, Olah, yes, it's a kind of an immigration. It is an immigration. You are in a weak situation, especially when you are coming from such a different country, not knowing anything. So when you are weak and you are a woman in a society and you have no back, no financial back, no support systems, you are very easy to become a victim of people who are taking advantage of the situation. So this is one of the things that were very dominant in our society for discussing and for speaking about that, because it was very important to me to give a place to women to hear their voices. And people, because our online communities is in Hebrew, because for us it's easier to speak in Hebrew, although I'm fluent in Russian, but still, so we grew up here. So many journalists and many public figures and many people were reading our communities and hearing what we were going through, and our mothers and grandmothers, etc., etc. So it was a hard experience for many women. That's true.
So the community is kind of a place where all of these women can come together and share their stories and share their experience.
Yes, and during the years, our community is many things. So First of all, we have a lot of gatherings outside. I mean, not every week, of course, because we are also working. And this is a volunteering, volunteer, work, if you can say it like that. But we have many gatherings of hundreds of people who arrive every time. But in our community, it's a place where you can, share your Aliyah story. You can speak about the differences you have, the struggles that you have still with your parents, because our parents become older, and we still need to help them in some kind of way, some kind of cultural discussions, For example, many people of our age already have children who were born here. So what do you do with the language? Do you teach them Russian or you don't teach them Russian? You yourself not always speak Russian fluently, so how can you teach them? But you want them to speak with the grandparents. So it's a theme.
So I think you're getting at the next set of things that I'm really curious about, which is you were given this idea that when you arrived, that you were coming to a melting pot. And that wasn't totally true for your community. And similarly, this idea that you mentioned earlier, this idea of being part of this 1.5 generation. Can you talk a little bit about that experience and kind of what you were sold versus the realities?
Because we came from Soviet Union, I know it's so funny to say Soviet Union because you feel it was like hundreds years ago,
It's the history
It's
books.
something it's something you read in the history books. But in my Teudat Zehut, it's written a place of birth. It's Soviet Union. I look at this and me.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, we came from Soviet Union and we didn't have information about that. We didn't know no melting. We had nothing. It was a closed society, We had no, my father always says, we didn't know where we go, but we knew where we are going from. So we had no information about melting pot or anything that was going here, like nothing. I don't know how our families did it. Really, I can tell you that. But I do want to say a few things about melting pot because it's one of the most persistent ideas in Israeli society. And I think we are already living in a post-melting pot period because you cannot melt identities, they learn this. You cannot melt identities. You cannot erase people's past because they will come back to their past. It's part of who they are in the present, and it's part of who they will become in the future. So it's about hierarchy, it's about power and power struggles in the society. So there's a lot of things to say about this, but like not now. But anyhow, I think if I can conclude, I think it's very important for everyone just to struggle to keep his own identity, and also to integrate. It goes together, I think, and then you can enrich the society you live in, because you can bring the baggage, the cultural baggage you had in your past life. And many times it's a struggle. For example, for our Aliyah, it was the biggest wave of Aliyah in Israeli history. Yes, approximately 1 million people came here. And one of the critics to our Aliyah was that we are keeping our language, we are keeping our culture, we are speaking Russian between us or Ukrainian, and we are going to the shows, and we have I host right there. I'm already hosting Russian as well, so and you came to Israel, speak Hebrew, and I said, yeah, I will speak Hebrew, but we will speak Russian as well. So I think it was possible because it was already in the 90s and not in the 60s and 70s when the country was still young. So we had this possibility, and also we were a lot of people, so there was more power. But I think it's important to keep the baggage you came from, because it will enrich your life and enrich the society as well.
So, because you were brought here by your parents and it wasn't like a decision that you made, was there ever a time when you felt like annoyed that they made you come here?
Not like annoyed, but I remember that when I was a child, from time to time, I was missing my home. I was missing, and I wanted to go home, but I understood that we won't go. It's not that I was annoyed because, when you grew up here, this is your home. Russia, the place where I was born, it's very important to me because it's my born place. It's my first experiences in life, but this is my home. So, I was sometimes mad at my home as I'm mad at it at this home now as well. It's part of, love-hate relationship, but it's mostly love. Yeah, I cannot really imagine myself living in other place, although I have had many opportunities along the way, like, career-wise and etc. But, because I think I know how it is to be a foreigner in other country, and not a foreigner, but we were minority. Jewish were minority in Soviet Union, and there was anti-Semitism, but not only. Like, we were minority, and I know we felt such freedom coming here and being able to express our Judaism without hiding it, and it's such a freedom for your like personal, I don't know, like breath. You can breathe. Yeah, it was and you can't really imagine it too. I can't imagine myself living in another country and not feeling comfortable saying I'm a Jewish woman. I mean, this is crazy.
So along those lines, was there ever a time, as you said, everyone has a love-hate relationship with their home, especially here, especially the last few years. Was there ever a time that you considered moving somewhere else?
No, not really. No, not really. I mean, no. I mean, I traveled a lot in the East and in the West and everywhere, but no, I didn't consider, because it's nice to feel at home, and I feel at home here.
Have you ever been back to Russia?
Yes, one time. I went one time when I was actually I was traveling. I had a very long journey when I was almost 30 years old. I left everything and I went, because I driven by passion, as we know already. So I left everything and I went to India for Nepal for half a year, and I was backtracking over there, and then I came back, and there was a family decision to come to visit Russia because we had some. Still some friends, some relatives, etc. And I went there, like, 20 years after coming here. And it was a very interesting experience because, I have a childhood memories. And when I was going back, I was curious about myself, how I will feel when I will come to our house, to the yard where I played with the children, where my first memories as a person were formed. And I wondered if I will have like an itch, an ache at my heart, and I didn't have when I came there. And yeah, and it was interesting, and I thought about that afterwards, and I understood that it's because my life as they were there, my childhood, is not here already. It passed. So the surrounding is still there. But me as a child and my family, everyone are young, we are not there anymore. It went away. So that's why I didn't feel anything. I just looked at this and it was nice to see, and that's it.
But this is your home.
Yeah, here it is.
What do you love most about living in Israel?
That's what I was going to ask. Like, in the love-hate relationship, what's the thing that brings you the most joy?
The most joy is just that I feel that I can be myself. I don't know how to explain it, and I also know that there's some kind of familiarity which is sometimes annoying, because people are asking you questions and you are like, who you are, like, who are you? you know but the other side of this coin is that that you can approach to anyone on the street and to ask for help or to ask for anything, and they will be there for you. I mean, you feel it on, like, and you feel also connected. You have a history with people here. You have a history, you are related to them. If I will go to live in, I don't know, Belgium or whatever, what is my connection with the people except us all being human beings? Like, what keeps us together? How I'm related? That's why I became activist and the social entrepreneur and the cultural entrepreneur, because I care. I care about the society I live in. I care about the country I live in. That's why I put my time and my energy to make this place better, and I hope I succeed in a way.
You absolutely are. Listen, in the last number of years, there have been a lot of Russian-speaking immigrants that have come, and there are people making Aliyah every day. You've been here now for a number of decades. What is the number one piece of advice you would offer someone who's considering or just made Aliyah?
Let the process go through you. Don't struggle so much. I mean, you will struggle, but don't don't make it like a war, you know. Just I don't want to use the word relax, because there is nothing relaxing about Aliyah, but just, you know, be part of this process. Just understand that you are going through a process in your life now, and just enjoy it, because it's interesting. You will become a different person a bit afterwards. So just enjoy the show, you know, enjoy this journey as much as you can, because the difficulties, they will come and they will go, like, you know, along all our life. But this is kind of journey, and you made a decision, and you need to stick to it, you know. Don't let doubts come into your head and into your heart. You know, you will think about this later, but just, you know, enjoy the process and be part of it.
I like this answer.
So when you're 80 years old and you're looking back on your life, what's something that you think will have been true because you made Aliyah that wouldn't have been true if you had stayed in Russia?
I become the person who I am, you know, and I'm pretty much okay with who I am. So, so I'm happy I'm here, and I got all those opportunities. And you know, it's not enough to have opportunities; it's also important to recognize them and to take them. So I'm happy that I have the opportunity to live among the people, you know, to live among my people, that I'm part of them. I mean, I think it's a blessing. So yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. We're going to jump into some rapid fire. So we're going to ask you questions, and we want a one-word answer. This is the next hardest thing that we're
Okay,
doing.
I don't know how to speak shortly, but I will try. I will
That's
try.
okay. We're giving you a challenge.
Okay.
All right. Favorite Israeli food or snack?
Hummus.
Oh, good.
Favorite Hebrew word or slang?
Yalla.
We accept. Favorite place in Israel?
Tel Aviv.
What does Shabbat look like for you?
Relaxation.
The thing you miss most from Russia?
The culture.
What's your only in Israel moment in just one sentence?
Just to hug strangers on the street because something happened, happy or sad.
That's very, very Israeli, yeah.
And thank you so much. This was a joy and a huge learning opportunity, and we're grateful for everything you're doing.
Thank you so much for inviting me. Thank you.
And if you enjoyed this episode, please share with everyone you know. Now let's go.
Yeah, let's go.
Yalla, let's go.